Hey guys, welcome back to Sleep Among Titans, where we drift through strange and quiet corners of the past perfect for listening before you sleep. Tonight we set sail for the so-called Golden Age of piracy, an era of myth and legend, of swashbuckling adventures and buried treasure. But we are not here for the myths. We are here for the quiet, lonely, and often tedious reality that lay between the pages of those stories. Your journey begins now, in the last hour of darkness, in the heart of the great empty ocean. The world for you is a small wooden barrel swaying gently at the top of a very tall mast. This is the crow's nest, your post for the dawn watch. The air up here is cool and clean, thick with the damp, salty taste of the sea. Below you, the ship, the Sea Serpent, is a dark, sleeping shape, a world of its own, groaning softly in its sleep. The only sounds are the constant low whistle of the wind in the rigging that surrounds you, the rhythmic creak and groan of the ship's timbers, and the soft, endless shush of the waves against the hull far below. Your duty is simple: to watch the horizon. You scan the vast 360-degree expanse of dark, inky water, searching for the telltale silhouette of another ship. You see nothing. There has been nothing for weeks. To the east, the sky is beginning to change. The impenetrable black is softening to a deep, bruised purple. A thin line of pale, watery orange is appearing at the edge of the world. This is the 54th time you have watched the sun rise on this voyage. In that time, you have sighted two playful dolphins that followed the ship for an afternoon, a pod of whales so far in the distance they were merely faint spouts of mist, and one very large patch of seaweed that caused a brief and ultimately very disappointing moment of excitement last Tuesday. You signed onto this vessel in a rowdy port tavern, your head filled with stories. You were promised a life of adventure, a freedom of gold for the taking. The captain spoke of Spanish galleons laden with silver from the new world, of desperate sea battles and glorious drunken victories. They sang songs of excitement and plunder. No one ever sang a song about the waiting. No one ever told you that the life of a pirate, a feared terror of the seas, is mostly an exercise in profound and endless boredom. It is a life of staring at an unchanging horizon, of mending sails, of eating the same stale food, of waiting for an adventure that may never arrive. You scan the empty horizon one last time as the first sliver of the sun appears, casting a golden road across the water. There is nothing. There is only the wind, the water, and the slow, steady creaking lullaby of the ship beneath you. Your long, calm, and deeply uneventful day has begun. Your watch at the top of the mast ends as the sun begins to warm the air, turning the deep blue of the sea to a sparkling turquoise. Another sailor, a man named Finn, with a tattoo of a remarkably cheerful-looking squid on his arm, slowly makes his way up the rigging to take your place. You exchange a grunt of acknowledgement, the universal language of men who have not had nearly enough sleep, and you begin your descent. The journey down the tarred ropes is a familiar dance. Your hands and feet know the way by heart. The moment your boots touch the solid wooden planks of the main deck is a moment of pure, simple relief. The deck is already alive with the morning's work. Two men are having a very serious, very quiet argument over whose turn it is to slop out the pen of the ship's emergency food supply, a large, bad-tempered pig named Lord Harrington. Near the bow, another pirate is patiently trying to teach the ship's parrot, a creature of magnificent green plumage and limited vocabulary, a new and deeply insulting phrase concerning the King of Spain. This is your world now. This small, floating wooden island populated by a tribe of heavily armed, perpetually tired, and quietly eccentric outcasts. You are exhausted from the watch, and your thoughts turn to the promise of a few hours of sleep in your hammock. You make your way to the forecastle hatch and begin your descent into the world below. You leave the bright, clean, salt-scented air of the morning behind and descend into what can only be described as a human marinade. The air below deck is a thick, warm, and complex soup of smells: damp wool, stale rum, bilge water tar, and the close human scent of 30 men who generally believe that soap is a theoretical concept. The ceiling is so low that you, a man of average height, must constantly stoop to avoid a concussion from the massive oak beams above. This is your home. It is not a room of beds, but a dim, crowded forest of hammocks strung up side by side, and one on top of the other. Privacy is a foreign concept here, a forgotten luxury from another life. You sleep, eat, and live surrounded by the snores, coughs, and muttered, often confusing dreams of your shipmates. Your hammock, a simple canvas sling, is your entire estate. It is your bedroom, your dining room, and on more than one occasion, a convenient footrest for your neighbor. A man named One-Eyed Jack, who snores with the force of a small thunderstorm and seems to be perpetually reliving a very one-sided argument with a mermaid. Your tour of this small universe is a short one. There is the galley, a tiny smoke-filled fire-hazardous space ruled by the ship's cook. He is a culinary tyrant with a wooden leg who defends his single enormous cauldron with the ferocity of a badger. He has, you've discovered, managed to invent 312 different ways to make salted beef and hardtack taste exactly the same. Then there is the main deck, which serves as your town square, your place of work, and your hall of justice. And at the stern, behind a heavy, imposing, and always closed door, is the captain's great cabin. It is the palace of your small kingdom, a place you only ever see from the outside. You had imagined when you first signed the ship's articles that you were joining a world of glorious anarchy, a society free from the stifling rules of civilization. You have discovered to your quiet and constant surprise that you have never lived in a more rule-obsessed community in your life. Pirates, it turns out, love rules. They adore bylaws. They cherish regulations. Your life is governed by the ship's articles, a contract you all agreed to which outlines a surprisingly detailed and often baffling code of conduct. You had expected rules against stealing or murder. You had not expected the rule stating that all candles must be extinguished by 8 o'clock in the evening. There is to be no reading, no late-night card games, no unauthorized revelry. This ship is less a den of thieves and more a very strict, very damp all-male boarding school. The articles also contain a remarkably detailed workers' compensation scheme. The loss of a right arm in battle is worth 600 pieces of 8. The loss of a left leg, 400. You have spent a considerable amount of your ample free time lying in your hammock trying to calculate why your right leg is apparently worth 100 pieces of 8 more than your left. It remains a deep and deeply troubling mystery. You finally reach your hammock, and with the practiced weariness of long experience, you crawl into its familiar, comforting, cocoon-like embrace. It sways gently with the constant, rhythmic motion of the ship, a cradle rocked by the sea itself. The sounds of your world, the groan of the wood, the snores of One-Eyed Jack, the distant, muffled squawk of the parrot attempting to curse the Spanish monarchy surround you. You reflect on the profound irony of it all. You fled the world of laws, only to find a world of even stricter, stranger laws. You sought adventure, and found a life of almost monastic routine. The world of a pirate is not what the stories say. It is stranger, more boring, and far, far more absurd. And as you close your eyes, letting the gentle rocking of the Sea Serpent pull you down into a deep and dreamless sleep, you decide that perhaps that is the greatest adventure of all. You are woken from your deep sleep not by the gentle light of dawn, but by the most effective alarm clock on the high seas, the furious ringing clang of an iron ladle being beaten against a large metal pot. This is the signal from One-Legged John, the ship's cook and culinary tyrant. It means that breakfast in all its grim and unchanging glory is served. A collective groan ripples through the crowded hammock-filled forecastle. This is the sound of 30 men stirring from their slumber, a symphony of coughs, grunts, and muttered curses. You swing your legs out of your hammock, your feet hitting the wooden deck with a dull thud. The air below deck is even thicker and warmer now, filled with the close human smell of your sleeping shipmates. And beneath it all, a new aroma is beginning to assert itself. It is the unmistakable, slightly worrying smell of heavily salted meat being boiled in stagnant water. You join the slow shuffling queue that leads to the galley, a small smoky hatchway from which One-Legged John distributes the day's first meal. The galley is his kingdom, and he rules it with absolute authority and a single enormous bubbling cauldron. As you reach the front of the line, he scowls at you, his default expression, and uses his great ladle to slop a measure of grayish, stringy meat chunks and thin broth into your proffered wooden bowl. He then wordlessly hands you 2 large, flat, off-white biscuits from a huge sack. This is your breakfast. It is the same breakfast you had yesterday, and the same breakfast you will have tomorrow. You find a relatively quiet spot on the deck to sit and contemplate your meal. You do not, of course, simply bite into the biscuit. That is a rookie mistake, a sure path to a cracked tooth and the unwelcome attentions of the ship's surgeon. Instead, You perform the time-honored sailor's ritual. You hold the biscuit, which is known as hardtack, over your bowl and tap it firmly on its edge. A small shower of black specks falls out of the tiny holes in the biscuit's surface and into your bowl. These are weevils. On your first week at sea, the sight of them horrified you. Now, 54 days later, your perspective has changed. You have come to think of them not as an infestation, but as an unexpected bonus. A little bit of fresh, crunchy protein to liven up the monotonous diet. You've even started a quiet competition with Finn the sailor with the squid tattoo to see who can dislodge the most weevils from a single biscuit. Your current record is 17. Today you only manage 9. A disappointing start to the day. With the biscuit de-weevilled, you dunk it into the thin, watery broth in your bowl. You let it soak for a long time until its rock-like consistency softens into a sodden, salty, and vaguely edible mush. Then you turn your attention to the meat. This is salt beef, though its appearance gives little clue to its origin. It has been preserved in a barrel of brine for so long, perhaps since before you were born, that it has lost all resemblance to actual food. It is gray, fibrous, and unnaturally hard. You spear a chunk with your knife and begin the laborious process of chewing. It has the tough, stringy texture of old rope and the overwhelming flavor of pure, unadulterated salt. It is a grim, joyless, but necessary task. You are not enjoying a meal. You are taking on fuel. When the last of the salty mush and stringy meat has been consumed, the best part of the morning arrives. The quartermaster appears on deck with a large barrel and a ladle. It is time for the day's first rum ration. You line up again, this time with a sense of genuine anticipation. The ration is not pure rum, of course. It is grog, a mixture of rum and water, a clever invention by an admiral to prevent the crew from saving up their rations and getting catastrophically drunk all at once. The quartermaster ladles a measure of the fragrant amber liquid into your mug. You take a sip. It is rough, fiery, and absolutely wonderful. The cheap, harsh rum burns a welcome clean path down your throat, washing away the lingering taste of salt and weevil. A pleasant, spreading warmth blossoms in your belly, a feeling of contentment that no amount of hardtack can provide. You reflect as you savor the last drops that the rum is the true lifeblood of this vessel. It is not just a drink. It is a currency used to settle bets. It is a medicine poured into wounds to clean them. It is a social lubricant, the catalyst for the songs and stories that help you all endure the long, boring nights. It is the one single daily moment of genuine, uncomplicated pleasure in an otherwise bleak and monotonous existence. The warmth of the grog spreads through you. The grim reality of the breakfast has been momentarily forgotten. You have taken on your fuel. You are ready to face another day of the same old work, mending sails, swabbing decks, and staring out at the vast, empty, and unchanging horizon. Breakfast in all its weevily and salty glory is over. The fleeting, pleasant warmth of the grog has settled in your belly, a small internal furnace to power you through the morning's work. The quartermaster, a man with a booming voice and a magnificent braided beard, begins to assign the day's duties. There are no grand pronouncements of a raid or a chase. There is only the mundane, essential, and unending list of tasks required to keep a large wooden ship from simply falling apart in the middle of the ocean. Your name is called. Your duty for this morning, swabbing the main deck. It is a task you have come to know with a deep, weary familiarity. You and a half-dozen other men haul up heavy wooden buckets of seawater, the cold, clear water sloshing over the sides and onto your bare feet. The initial shock of the cold is sharp, but you have grown used to it. The deck, a pale expanse of wood bleached by sun and salt, is your canvas. The work begins. It is a kind of rhythmic shuffling dance. A bucket of water is thrown across the planks, and then you and your team, armed with heavy, long-handled mops, begin to scrub. The motion is always the same, a steady, hypnotic, back and forth, your body swaying in time with the gentle roll of the ship. The only sound is the rhythmic scrape and swish of the mops on the wet wood, a percussive, lulling sound that becomes the heartbeat of your morning. You are not so much cleaning the deck as you are performing a ritual. The sun and the salt air will have the wood dried and crusted with a fresh layer of white salt within an hour of your finishing. You have come to realize that the goal is not really cleanliness. The goal is the appearance of diligent work, a far more valuable currency on this ship. You are keeping busy showing the captain and the quartermaster that the crew is not idle. It is a pointless Sisyphean task pushing water around a great wooden rock. But there is a strange, mindless peace in its rhythm, a comfort in its predictability. For a few hours you do not have to think. You only have to sway and scrub and listen to the swish of the water. The afternoon brings a different, more meticulous kind of work. A small tear has been discovered in the great topsail, the massive sail high above the deck. The sail is lowered, a process involving a great deal of shouting and pulling on ropes until an immense sea of off-white canvas lies spread across the deck. It feels like a collapsed tent the size of a village square. Your task is to patch the tear. You sit cross-legged in the middle of this canvas ocean, the sun warm on your back. You are given the tools of a sailmaker, a large triangular needle, a block of hard yellow beeswax for waterproofing the heavy thread, and a sailmaker's palm, a leather strap with a round metal dimple that you wear over your hand. You begin the slow, deliberate work of mending. First, you run the thick thread across the beeswax again and again until it is stiff and waterproof. Then, you begin to stitch. Each stitch is a small battle. You push the point of the great needle into the tough, stiff, salt-stiffened canvas. You place the dimple of your sailmaker's palm against the eye of the needle, and you push with all the strength of your shoulder and back. The needle resists, then gives way with a small pop. You pull the thread through your arms, straining to make the stitch tight and strong. Then you begin again. Push, pop, pull. The rhythm is slow and it requires immense concentration. You have come to know this sail as a living thing. It is old, grumpy, and seems to resent being mended. You and the sail have a relationship of mutual grudging respect. You patiently patch its wounds, closing its tears with your strong waxed thread. And in return, the sail hopefully will not rip in half during the next squall and send you all to the bottom of the sea. It seems like a fair bargain. As the sun begins to dip towards the horizon, the day ends with one final communal and deeply unpleasant task. The bilge must be pumped. The bilge is the very bottom of the ship, the dark, unseen space where all the water that leaks through the hull inevitably collects. It is a stagnant, sloshing soup of old seawater mixed with rainwater, spilled rum, and all the other nameless filth that drips down through the floorboards. If it is not pumped out daily, the ship will grow heavy, slow, and eventually it will sink. You and several other men gather around the bilge pump on the main deck. It is a large, crude wooden machine with two long, heavy handles. You take your positions. On the quartermaster's call, you begin to work, pushing and pulling the great handles in a steady, groaning rhythm. Up, down, up, down. As you work, a foul, overpowering smell begins to rise from the pump's outlet. It is the smell of the ship's innermost, dirtiest secret. It is the smell of decay, of stagnation, of 100 things you would rather not think about. A thick, dark, brownish stream of water begins to gush from the outlet pipe over the side of the deck and back into the clean blue sea. The work is grueling. Your muscles burn. Your back screams. But you continue the steady pumping rhythm. And in that moment, a quiet, humorous thought occurs to you. This is the truth of the pirate's life. This is the great secret behind the myths and legends. The entire glorious, swashbuckling golden age of piracy, with all its adventure and plunder, is literally kept afloat by the diligent daily pumping of stinking water. Finally, the gushing stream slows to a trickle and then stops. The bilge is clear for another day. You are exhausted, your back aches, and you smell faintly of the ship's deepest horrors. You have swabbed and stitched and pumped. You have not fought a single Spaniard. You have not found a single piece of gold. But you have done the real work of a pirate. You have helped your small wooden world survive another day on the vast, empty, and unchanging sea. The day's main chores are done. The decks have been swabbed into a state of temporary salt-crusted cleanliness. The tear in the topsail has been meticulously, if grudgingly, stitched and repaired. The foul-smelling belly of the ship, the bilge, has been pumped clear for another day. And now, the great yawning expanse of the afternoon stretches out before you, an ocean of empty time on an ocean of empty water. The sun is high and hot, beating down on the pale wooden deck. A lazy, sleepy stillness settles over the Sea Serpent. The ship drifts on a calm, glassy sea, its sails hanging loose, barely filled by a weak and intermittent breeze. This, you have come to learn, is the true pirate's life. Not the thrilling chase or the roar of cannon fire, but this. The long, slow, and profound silence of the great calm. You have an infinite amount of time to kill and a very limited selection of tools with which to kill it. You look around the deck and observe the various ways your shipmates wage their own personal wars against the great enemy of boredom. The most common pastime, of course, is gambling. In a shady spot near the mainmast, a small, intense group is gathered around an upturned barrel. They are playing cards. The cards themselves are a sorry sight, so worn and greasy from months of use that the faces of the kings and queens are barely distinguishable. They are bent and soft and smell faintly of rum. The stakes of the game are by necessity very small. There is no gold to be won here. Instead, they wager with the small personal currencies of the ship, a spare button from a coat, the promise of tomorrow's grog ration, a week's exemption from the hated duty of cleaning the chicken coop. You watch for a moment as two of the most fearsome-looking pirates on the crew, men with scars on their faces and murder in their eyes, get into a heated, deeply serious, whispered argument over whether one of them glanced at the other's cards. The fate of a single stale biscuit hangs precariously in the balance. A quieter group pursues a more artistic endeavor. These are the craftsmen, the scrimshawers. They sit alone, their backs against the warm wood of the ship's rail, holding a piece of whale tooth or a large section of bone scavenged from the cook's stew pot. With the tip of a sharp knife, they spend hours, days, even weeks meticulously scratching intricate designs into the surface. It is an art form of immense patience and delicate skill, born of extreme boredom. You watch as a man named Blacktooth Bill, a man you once saw cleave a ship's railing in half with a single swing of an axe, now hunches over a piece of bone, his great scarred hands working with the delicacy of a master jeweler to carve the image of a beautiful, impossible mermaid. It is a strange and wonderful contrast. These men who make their living by taking things by force spend their empty hours creating things of delicate, useless beauty. Then there are the storytellers. An older sailor, a man who claims to have sailed with Blackbeard himself, is holding court for a small captive audience. His voice is a low, captivating rumble. He is telling a wild, fantastical tale of a hidden island guarded by sea monsters, where the beaches are made not of sand but of powdered gold. You know he is lying. Everyone knows he is lying. But they listen anyway, their faces rapt with attention. The stories are not for information. They are for transportation. They are a way to fill the great silent emptiness of the sea with something other than the endless creaking of wood and the whistle of the wind. A good lie, you have learned, is worth much more than a boring truth out here. The largest group of all, however, are the sleepers. On a ship where your work is physically demanding and your sleep is often interrupted, no opportunity for rest is ever wasted. Men are scattered across the ship like fallen leaves. They are asleep in their hammocks below deck. They are curled up in coils of rope. They are leaning against the warm metal of a cannon, their heads lolling on their chests. Sleep, you reflect with a quiet smile, is the cheapest, most reliable, and by far the most popular form of entertainment aboard the Sea Serpent. And what of you? You are not in the mood for the quiet tension of the card game or the loud lies of the storyteller. You have slept enough for now. So you practice your own private art of doing nothing. You find a quiet spot at the very stern of the ship near the great rudder. You sit with your back against the rail and you watch the wake. It is a hypnotic and beautiful sight. The water churned by the ship's passing is a trail of brilliant white foam, a temporary road stretching back for miles before it finally dissolves into the deep, unchanging blue of the ocean. The pattern is always changing, yet always the same. It is a testament to the fact that you are moving, that you are going somewhere, even if you have no idea where that is. You watch the foam, you feel the gentle warmth of the sun on your skin. You listen to the rhythmic sounds of the ship, and you let your mind go empty. You are not fighting the boredom anymore. You are not trying to kill the time. You are simply inhabiting it. You are becoming one with the great calm, quiet, and empty expanse of the sea. And in this profound meditative nothingness, you find a strange and unexpected sense of peace. The long empty afternoon has bled into a calm warm evening. The second and more generous rum ration of the day has been distributed, and a slightly more lively, more volatile mood has settled over the crew of the Sea Serpent. With the grog comes a loosening of tongues and a raising of spirits. And sometimes it brings trouble. You are sitting near the mainmast watching the familiar group of gamblers who have resumed their game of dice on an upturned barrel. The stakes are a little higher now, fueled by the liquid courage of the rum. A small pile of copper coins and a few silver shillings sit in the center of the barrel head. Suddenly, the low, friendly murmur of the game is broken by a sharp, angry voice. Cheat. By all the devils, you're a cheat. It is a wiry, hot-tempered pirate named Calico Jack. He is pointing an accusing finger at another sailor, a large, quiet, and immensely strong man named Silas. The other players fall silent. The men nearby stop their conversations and turn to watch. A circle forms around the two men. In the close, tense confines of a pirate ship, any dispute is a public spectacle, the most interesting form of theater available. You instinctively tense up. In the stories you were told in the legends of the pirates, this is the moment that knives are drawn. This is where a disagreement over a roll of the dice ends with blood on the deck. But that is not what happens. Instead, the quartermaster, a man named Israel, pushes his way through the crowd. Israel is not the biggest or the strongest man on the ship, but when he speaks, everyone listens. He is the keeper of the ship's rules, the elected magistrate of this floating society of outlaws. What's the trouble here? He asks, his voice calm and steady. He's using loaded dice, Calico. Jack spits, his face red with anger and rum. Every time it's his turn to roll, a 6 appears as if by magic. Silas, the large, quiet man, simply shakes his head. It's an honest die, he says, his voice a low rumble. I'm just lucky today. The quartermaster nods slowly. He does not call for violence. He calls for order. A formal hearing is required, he announces. And so a strange and surreal courtroom is convened on the deck of the ship. The upturned barrel moments ago, a gambling table, now becomes the judge's bench. The quartermaster stands behind it. Calico Jack is the plaintiff. Silas is the defendant. And you, along with the rest of the crew, become the silent, observant jury. The proceedings are remarkably formal. Calico Jack is invited to present his case. He does so with a great deal of theatrical indignation, describing how Silas consistently rolled high numbers, how it was statistically impossible for him to be so lucky. He finishes his speech by slamming his fist on the ship's rail and demanding justice. Then Silas is invited to offer his defense. He is a man of few words. He simply picks up the die in question, a single small cube of polished bone with dark pips, and places it in the quartermaster's hand. It is an honest die, he repeats quietly. The quartermaster, now the judge, begins his examination of the evidence. The moment is treated with the utmost seriousness. He turns the small die over and over in his fingers, inspecting each side. He holds it up to the fading light, looking for any sign of tampering. Then he calls out, John, a bowl of water, one-legged. John the cook grumbles, but soon appears from the galley with a small bowl of fresh water. The quartermaster takes the bowl and gently drops the die into it. The entire crew leans in to watch. This is a common test for a loaded die. If it is weighted, it will consistently float with the heaviest side down. He prods the die with his finger, making it spin in the water. It tumbles randomly, coming to rest on a different number each time. 3, 5, 1, 6. After several long silent moments, the quartermaster lifts the die from the water. He has reached his decision. The die is honest. He declares, his voice final. Silas is not a cheat. He is merely lucky. Case dismissed. A collective sigh of relief and slight disappointment goes through the crowd. The drama is over. But the quartermaster is not finished. He turns his stern gaze on Calico Jack. However, he says, his voice now carrying a tone of judgment. Article 7 of our compact, which you signed your mark to, clearly states, any man who shall make an unjust accusation against his shipmate, thereby sowing discord amongst the crew, shall suffer such punishment as the captain and the majority of the company shall see fit. He looks around at the crew. The punishment for this infraction, he announces, is the forfeiture of the accuser's rum ration for the next 2 days. Calico Jack grumbles under his breath, but he nods in acceptance. The law is the law. The verdict is final. The crowd disperses, the brief tense drama having evaporated as quickly as it began. You watch all of this unfold with a quiet sense of wonder. You came to this life seeking freedom from the laws of kings and governors. But you have found that these men, these outlaws who have declared themselves enemies of all nations, cling to their own laws more fiercely than any magistrate. Their code is not about morality or divine will. It is about practical, brutal survival. It is the invisible thread that holds their violent, greedy, and deeply bored society together. It is the only thing that allows 36 heavily armed men to live in a small wooden box for months on end without murdering each other over a roll of the dice. As you prepare for another quiet, uneventful night, you find a strange sense of security in this realization. Even here in the heart of lawlessness on the wide, empty sea, there is still a law, and tonight you are grateful for it. Your duties for the day are a departure from the usual. You have been assigned to assist the ship's cook, a man known to all simply as One-Legged John. This is considered a desirable post by some. It is a chance to be near the source of the food and perhaps even sneak an extra biscuit. But it is also a chance to be near One-Legged John, which is a far more mixed blessing. You descend into the galley. It is the hottest, smokiest, and most chaotic place on the ship. It is a small, cramped space dominated by a brick-lined firebox and the enormous black cast-iron cauldron that sits upon it perpetually simmering. The air is thick with wood smoke and the familiar salty smell of boiling beef. This is John's kingdom, and he rules it from a small three-legged stool, a position that allows him to tend the fire and stir the pot without having to put weight on his wooden leg. He looks up as you enter, his one good eye narrowing. He does not greet you. He simply points with his ladle to a large wooden bucket filled with chunks of salt beef and a chopping block next to it. The meat won't chop itself, he grunts. Your task for the day is simple and monotonous. You are to take the hard gray chunks of preserved beef and chop them into smaller, more manageable pieces for the evening's stew. You take up a heavy cleaver and begin your work. The meat is tough, resisting the blade. The work is hard on your arms and back. For a long time, the only sound in the galley is the steady, rhythmic thump, thump, thump of your cleaver hitting the wooden block, a sound that harmonizes with the gentle bubbling of the cauldron. After a while, John seems to decide you are not entirely useless, and he begins to talk. He does not engage in small talk. He talks about the things he knows, the great fundamental truths of his world, food and hardship. There are 3 kinds of salt beef on this earth, lad. He begins, his voice a low, gravelly rumble. He gestures with his ladle towards your bucket. What you're chopping now, that's hard. It's what we've been eating for the past month. Before that, we had damned hard. And what we have to look forward to next month, that's a vintage variety I like to call, might as well be a bloody rock. He lets out a dry, humorless chuckle. The trick isn't in the cooking. The trick is to boil it for so long that the men forget what it's supposed to taste like in the first place. You continue chopping, listening to his cynical wisdom. Same goes for the biscuit, he says, pointing to a large open sack of hardtack. You see them weevils? You nod. Don't you go thinking of them as pests, lad. You think of them as volunteer sailors. They're on this voyage with us. They eat the same damn food. They sleep in the same damn ship. Only difference is they don't have to swab the decks or listen to the quartermasters complaining. In my book, that makes them smarter than us. He falls silent for a while, stirring the great pot, lost in thought. The stew, you notice, seems to be a simple affair. The beef, you are chopping some crumbled hardtack for thickness and water. You decide to risk a question. Ever think of adding some onion or maybe some herbs, John? He looks at you as if you've just suggested adding gold dust. Onions, herbs. He scoffs. This is a pirate ship, lad, not a bloody garden party in Mayfair. Flavor is a luxury. We deal in sustenance. This stew isn't meant to be enjoyed. It's meant to keep you alive long enough to do your work tomorrow so you can eat it again. That is its purpose. Anything else is just foolish sentiment. He gestures to his wooden leg, which is propped up on a small stool of its own. It is a simple carved piece of wood, scarred and stained from years of use. You see this leg? He asks. You nod again. Lost the original in the Caribbean, but not in some grand battle. No cannonball took this leg from me. He leans forward. I lost it to a falling barrel of rum in a storm off of Tortuga. The crew scrambled to save the rum, of course. My leg was a secondary concern. He pats the wooden peg affectionately. Still, I'd rather lose a limb to a barrel of good rum than to a Spanish cannonball. At least the rum had an honest reason for being there. He finishes his story and returns to stirring the stew. You continue your steady rhythmic chopping. The conversation, it seems, is over. As the sun begins to set, casting long shadows across the deck above, John takes 2 wooden bowls. He ladles a small amount of the thick, gray, bubbling stew into each one. He hands one to you. Your wages for the day, he grunts. You sit there in the smoky hot galley, and you eat. The stew tastes exactly as you expected, salty, thick, and profoundly uninteresting. But eating it here in the presence of its creator feels different. It feels like a communion, a shared understanding. John watches you eat. You want to survive out here, lad, he asks quietly. You look up. Learn to enjoy the small things, he says, his voice losing some of its usual growl. A ration of grog that isn't too watered down. A biscuit with less than 20 weevils. A calm sea after a squall. Because the big things, the treasure, the glory, the freedom, they're mostly lies we tell ourselves to make the boredom bearable. But a full belly, even if it's full of this rubbish. He gestures with his spoon to the cauldron. That's real. You finish your stew, the truest words you've heard since you came aboard settling in your mind. You thank him. He just grunts in reply. You leave the galley and step back out onto the deck. The air is cool and fresh. The conversation has done nothing to change the facts of your life. The food is still terrible. The sea is still empty. But you feel a little less alone. You have learned a valuable lesson in the quiet, cynical, and deeply practical philosophy of survival. You leave the hot, smoky galley and step back out onto the main deck. The cool, salt-tinged air is a welcome relief, washing the smell of greasy stew from your clothes. The cook's words settle in your mind, a piece of quiet, cynical wisdom that feels more real than any of the grand stories of treasure and glory. The big things. They're mostly lies we tell ourselves to make the boredom bearable. You look out at the horizon, at that familiar, endless expanse of blue, and for the first time you feel a sense of acceptance. Perhaps John the cook is right. Perhaps this is all there is. The gentle rock of the ship, the predictable meals, the long, quiet hours. A full belly and a calm sea. Maybe that is enough. But the sea, it seems, has other ideas. The calm does not break with a sudden violence, but with a subtle, almost imperceptible shift. The wind, which has been a steady, gentle companion for weeks, picks up a new note, a lower, more insistent hum. The gentle, cradle-like rocking of the sea serpent becomes a little more purposeful, a deeper sway that you feel in the pit of your stomach. The sky, a perfect empty canvas only an hour ago, is now feathered with high gray clouds gathering on the western horizon. It is not a storm, not yet. It is something else. It is a change. And you feel that change ripple through the crew like a silent electric current. The men who were lazily mending nets look up, their hands suddenly still. The group playing dice by the mainmast lets their game fall quiet, their eyes turning instinctively toward the sky. The oppressive quiet of shared boredom has been replaced by a different kind of silence, one that is taut, focused, and thrumming with a low nervous energy. This new purpose arrives in the form of the ship's quartermaster, a man named Finn. He is a creature of grim efficiency, with a beard that looks as though it was woven from old rope and a gaze that could curdle milk. He moves with a heavy, deliberate tread, and as he approaches you, he drops 2 items at your feet with a meaningful thud that cuts through the quiet, your cutlass and your flintlock pistol. The captain smells a merchantman on that wind. He grunts, his voice a gravelly rumble that seems to be dredged up from the bilge. He looks you up and down, his expression suggesting he has little faith in your abilities. He wants our teeth sharp. See that you don't take a finger off. I've no time for stitching. With that, he moves on a storm cloud of practicality, leaving you with your new assignment. You pick up the cutlass. It is not a thing of beauty. It is not the gleaming, jewel-hilted saber of a storybook hero. Just yesterday you were using its flat side to crush a particularly stubborn biscuit. Today it must become something else. It is a brutally practical piece of steel stained with salt and marked with small, dark patches of rust. You find a spot on the deck away from the main thoroughfare, and settle in for the meditative work ahead. You dip the whetstone in a bucket of seawater, the grit of it feeling cool and rough under your fingers. Then you begin. The long, steady scrape of the stone against the blade becomes the new rhythm of your world. Shh. A long draw down one side, the sound a metallic whisper. Shh. A steady pull down the other, the steel singing softly under the pressure. It is a slow, patient conversation between your hands and the blade. With each pass, you feel the small imperfections, the tiny nicks from some long-forgotten scuffle, and you work to smooth them away. You reflect with a touch of dry amusement that the cook's philosophy already feels like a distant memory. Just as you had learned to enjoy the small things, a very large thing seems to be looming on the horizon. You glance over at a giant of a man named Silas, a pirate so large he seems to have been carved from a ship's mast. He is tending to his own weapon, a terrifying boarding axe, but he works with the delicate, focused grace of a seamstress mending lace. His massive, scarred fingers guide the sharpening file with a gentleness that is both comical and deeply unnerving. It seems even the most fearsome of men find a certain peace in this ritual. It is a way to channel the nervous energy, the coiled spring of anticipation that now lives in your gut, into something productive. After what feels like an hour, the work is done. You run your thumb carefully along the edge of your cutlass. It is keen now, a razor-sharp whisper of potential. It gleams with a clean, cold light in the gray afternoon, a silver promise. You give it a final wipe with an oily rag, the metallic scent clinging to your hands, and set it carefully aside. Now for its partner, the pistol. If the cutlass is a tool of brutal simplicity, the pistol is a creature of infuriating complexity. It is a heavy, temperamental device of wood and brass and steel that you have more suspicion of than faith in. You unscrew the flint, checking it for chips. You use a small, stiff brush to clear the firing pan of old powder residue. You take a thin iron rod, the worm, and carefully screw it down the barrel, pulling out the damp, clotted remains of the last wadding. The smell of old powder and oil is sharp and distinct. The process is delicate, almost surgical. Every part must be clean, dry, and perfectly seated. You remember the quartermaster's grim lecture when you were first issued the weapon. A loud bang is desirable, Finn had grumbled. A small handheld explosion that removes your own face is not. Pay attention. You take his advice to heart. You use a soft cloth to polish the brass. You test the trigger mechanism. Click. The sound is sharp, decisive in the quiet air. Click-clack. You pull the hammer back to full cock. The sound is a small mechanical promise. It is the sound of a question waiting for its answer. All around you, the rest of the crew is engaged in this same quiet industry. The air is filled with the scrape of metal on stone, the soft click of pistol hammers, and the low, focused murmur of men preparing for a task they have spent months dreaming of and secretly dreading. The boredom is gone. It has been replaced by the strangely comforting weight of purpose. And as you finish your work, as you look at your gleaming cutlass and your clean, ready pistol, you feel a jolt of something you haven't felt in 54 days. It is a terrifying, exhilarating thing. It is the feeling of being truly, terribly alive. You stow your newly sharpened cutlass and your meticulously cleaned pistol. The tools are ready. A strange, quiet satisfaction settles over you. Your hands still smell faintly of oil and metal, the scent of purpose. You stand and take a deep breath of the salt air, feeling the shift not just in the weather but in the very soul of the ship. The Sea Serpent is no longer a lazy log adrift on the current. She is a predator, coiled and quiet, every timber and rope drawn taut with anticipation. And then you hear it, a sound that cuts through the focused silence of the ship. It is not a shout or a bell. It is the firm, steady tread of heavy leather boots on the wooden steps leading to the quarterdeck. It's an unfamiliar sound. For the last 54 days, the captain has been a ghost, a legend whispered about in the cramped spaces below deck. You have only seen him from a distance, a silhouette standing aft, more a part of the ship's architecture than a man of flesh and blood. He is the decider, the god of this small floating world, but his presence has been more of an idea than a reality. Now that legend is walking among mortals. The captain appears on the quarterdeck. He does not bellow orders or gesture wildly. He simply stands there, a quiet heavier than any before it descends upon the deck. The men who had been pretending to be busy suddenly find themselves becoming genuinely intensely occupied. A sailor who had been scratching his back now appears to be inspecting the rigging for wear with the focus of a master craftsman. Another who had been staring blankly at the sea now has the look of a man deciphering the secrets of the cosmos in the cloud patterns. A sudden silent scramble to appear useful washes over the crew. The captain pays no mind to this silent theater. His attention is not on his crew. It is fixed on the horizon. In his hands he holds his most prized possession, a thing more vital than the ship itself. His spyglass. It is an old battered instrument. The brass is tarnished green by salt and sea spray. The leather wrap around its body worn and cracked. It looks more like an ancient relic than a naval tool. It is his third eye, an extension of his will and focus. You watch as he raises the spyglass to his eye. It is a slow, practiced motion performed thousands of times. He begins his patrol, a slow, patient sweep from port to starboard, taking in the entire curve of the world. Your own breath seems to stop as he does this. The entire crew holds its collective breath. You wonder what he sees out there. Is it still just gray waves and a leaden sky? Or can his eye, honed by decades at sea, perceive things a normal man cannot? The whispers start new myths being woven in the tense quiet. An old salt insists the captain can smell the spices on a merchant ship from 10 leagues off. A cabin boy swears he once predicted a hurricane by watching the flight of an albatross. These stories, like the ones of treasure, are perhaps just lies to make the waiting bearable. But as you watch the absolute focus of the man, you begin to wonder. After a full sweep, the captain collapses the spyglass with a soft, decisive thump. He stands motionless for a minute as if processing the information the sea has offered him. Then he raises it again and begins the ritual once more. The sweep, the pause, the collapse, the repetition. This silent ceremony becomes the new rhythm of the ship. It replaces the scraping and scrubbing of maintenance, the mending of sails. It is the rhythm of the hunt. You feel a strange compulsion. You find yourself squinting at the horizon, trying uselessly to spot the tiny black speck, the distant glint of light, anything at all to break the monotony. You see nothing. The sea remains empty. The humor of it strikes you for a second, this great feared pirate captain staring with ferocious intensity at absolutely nothing. You imagine him having a quiet word with the spyglass. "Anything for me today, Bessie?" Not a sausage captain. But his focus is contagious. The silence he commands is more potent than any order. No one dares to be idle. No one dares to play at cards. Even the usual grumbling about the food has ceased. The ship has become quieter, yet more alert than you have ever seen it. Every creak of the timbers, every snap of a flag in the wind makes men jump, their eyes darting to the captain, then to the horizon. His unbroken vigil has wound the entire crew into a single taut spring, ready to be released. The day wears on. He remains at his post, a silhouette against the setting sun, the spyglass a permanent fixture at his eye. He is no longer a distant myth. He is the living embodiment of the ship's purpose, the focal point of all your collective hope and anxiety, still scanning that vast, empty, and promising horizon. The sun has long since surrendered to the horizon, bleeding out in streaks of purple and dusky orange before finally being swallowed by the sea. The world is now a vast bowl of deep, star-dusted black. The moon, a heavy silver coin, casts a lonely path of light across the waves, making the churning water look like hammered pewter. Your turn on watch has come around again, a 4-hour stretch of profound silence on the main deck. The captain has finally retired to his cabin, but his presence lingers like a ghost. The intense, focused energy he brought to the deck has not dissipated. It has soaked into the wood, into the minds of the crew. Every man moves with a quieter tread, speaks in a lower voice. The ship is a coiled spring, and you have been living in this state of tense, quiet readiness for what feels like an eternity. In a strange way, it is more exhausting than the boredom was. Boredom, at least, allowed you to sleep with both eyes closed. This new vigilance keeps one eye perpetually open, scanning a dark and empty sea. You lean against the rail, watching the moonlight on the water. Above you in the crow's nest, a lone figure is silhouetted against the stars. It is Abel, a wiry old salt, whose skin has been turned to leather by 50 years of sun and spray. His eyes, you've noticed, seem permanently squinted, as if he is forever staring into a harsh glare even in the dead of night. He is as much a part of that mast as the timber itself, a silent, unmoving sentinel whose only purpose is to look. You wonder what a man thinks about up there alone with the wind and the stars for hours on end. Does he remember old ports? Old loves? Or has his mind been wiped clean by the sheer, overwhelming emptiness of the sea until all that is left is the looking? The ship creaks a long, low groan like a sleeping giant turning over. The wind whistles a mournful single note through a gap in the rigging. You pull your collar tighter against the damp chill. Your eyelids feel heavy. The gentle rocking motion of the ship, which has lulled you to sleep so many nights, is now a dangerous siren calling you to let your attention drift. You shake your head, forcing yourself alert. You think of the cook's stew, of the captain's relentless gaze, of the 54 days of nothing. And in that deep, hypnotic quiet, you begin to wonder if maybe this is it. Maybe this is the adventure. Not the chase, but the waiting itself. And that is when the silence is torn in two. It comes from high above, from the top of the world. It is not a scream of panic, but a sharp professional cry, honed by years of practice to cut through the howl of a gale and the crash of waves. Sail-hoo. The sound is long drawn out, almost like a bird's call. It travels down from the mast, a word made physical, striking the deck like a stone dropped into a still pond. For a single heart-stopping second, no one moves. The crew is frozen, a gallery of statues in the pale moonlight. The word hangs in the air, electric and terrifying and wonderful. It's the sound you have been dreaming of and dreading in equal measure for almost 2 months. Then the spell breaks. There is no return shout, no huzzah, no chaotic scramble. That is for the Navy or for merchant sailors. This is a crew of professionals, and what happens next is a silent explosion of purpose. It is like watching a well-oiled machine which you did not even know was assembled roar to life. Men drop what they are doing, their movements economical and swift. A sailor mending a net simply drops it and sprints barefoot and silent to his station at the sails. The men who were asleep below deck seem to materialize out of the hatches, their eyes already alert, pulling on shirts as they move. For a moment, your own mind is a blank. Your feet feel nailed to the deck. Where am I supposed to be? What am I supposed to do? You almost trip over a coil of rope in a sudden clumsy lurch toward the mainmast. You see Silas the giant moving with a speed and grace that seems impossible for his size, already beginning to haul on a line with 2 other men, their muscles straining in perfect unison. Then the captain is there. He emerges from his cabin not with a frantic dash, but with a calm, predatory speed that is far more unnerving. He is already fully dressed, as if he never sleeps at all. His eyes are alight with a cold fire. He does not ask what is happening. He knows. He snatches a brass-speaking trumpet from its hook, raises it to his lips, and aims it toward the top of the mast. His voice booms out effortlessly, rising above the wind, a sound of pure command. "Where away?" The reply comes down from Abel, just as clear and professional a voice, stripped of all emotion, save for the information it carries. 2 points off, the starboard bow looks heavy, flying low in the water. Heavy, low in the water. The words mean one thing: cargo. Rich cargo. The captain lowers the trumpet. He turns to the helmsman. He does not shout. He gives a series of quiet, crisp orders. Hard to starboard. Bring her about. I want to come up on her stern. The helmsman repeats the orders, and the great wheel begins to turn. The ship groans as it alters its course, leaning into the waves, its posture changing from a gentle drift to a determined slicing advance. You find your station, your hands closing around the familiar rough texture of a rope. You take your place alongside 2 other sailors, and you begin to pull, your muscles burning with the sudden welcome strain. The monotony is shattered. The waiting is over. You look around at the crew, no longer a collection of bored, grumbling individuals, but a single focused organism, moving with silent, deadly grace in the pale moonlight. The lie of adventure is over. The reality of the hunt has just begun. The Sea Serpent is awake. She leans into the turn, her great mast groaning in a sound that is not one of complaint, but of effort. The sails, which have hung limp and sighing for weeks, now snap taut with a sound like a thunderclap catching the belly of the wind. The ship surges forward and you feel the deck tremble with a new and unfamiliar life. The monotonous, gentle rocking is gone, replaced by a determined slicing motion as she cuts through the waves, her prow throwing up a fine, cold spray that mists your face in the moonlight. The hunt has begun. Your brief internal panic evaporates, replaced by the simple overriding need to do your job. You find your station, a length of thick, coarse rope that feels as rough as a stone wall in your hands. You are part of a team of 4, your job to handle the braces for the main topsail. The quartermaster Finn is orchestrating the deck like a furious conductor leading a silent orchestra. He doesn't shout, not really. He barks, short, guttural commands that are carried on the wind. Heave on that brace. Heave, you sea slugs, put your backs into it. You and the 3 other men lean back, digging your heels into the damp wood of the deck. You pull in unison, not to a chant, but to a shared explosive grunt of effort. The rope is impossibly heavy, a dead weight fighting you with the full force of the wind. Your muscles, grown soft and lazy from weeks of idleness, scream in protest. A fire ignites in your shoulders and back. Just this morning, the most strenuous thing you'd done was pry a weevil out of a biscuit. Now you feel as though you are trying to pull the moon from the sky. The sail slowly, grudgingly swings into its new position, perfectly angled to the wind. Finn gives a sharp, satisfied nod and immediately barks a new command at another group of sailors. The work is constant. You move from one rope to another, one sail to the next, your body a small cog in the great complex machine of the ship. You haul, you coil, you climb. The romantic image you once held of a pirate chase, of swinging from the rigging with a sword between your teeth, is rapidly replaced by the mundane, back-breaking reality. The reality, it turns out, is mostly just pulling on very heavy ropes. You have a new, profound appreciation for the simple art of sitting still. But there is a strange beauty to it. You watch as the entire crew, this collection of misfits and malcontents, moves as one. There is no confusion, no hesitation. Every man knows his role, his rope, his place in this intricate dance. Orders are communicated not just by Finn's barks, but by a series of silent hand signals from the captain, who still stands on the quarterdeck, his spyglass now fixed on the distant, fleeing shadow. The ship is a single focused organism, its muscles the straining bodies of the crew, its mind the cold, calculating gaze of the captain. You even see John, the one-legged cook, emerge for a moment from the galley. He leans on the doorway, his face a mask of profound disapproval, as if all this noise and effort is a personal affront to the delicate simmering of his evening stew. He glares at a man who nearly trips over a bucket, shakes his head at the sheer inefficiency of it all, and then disappears back into his smoky sanctuary. Some men are made for the hunt. Others, you realize, are made for complaining about it. Hours pass. The moon climbs high, a silent white witness to your labors. The initial burst of adrenaline has long since faded, replaced by a deep, aching fatigue that settles into your very bones. Your hands are raw, the skin rubbed red and angry by the rough hemp of the ropes. But no one slows down. No one complains. The energy that fuels you now is not adrenaline but purpose, and a different kind of excitement. Every few minutes you allow yourself a glance over the rail. The other ship is no longer an indistinct smudge. You can see it now. A heavy, broad-beamed merchant vessel, a galleon by the look of it, plowing through the sea under a full set of sails. She is a fat, lumbering beast, completely unaware of the sleek, silent predator closing in on her from behind. In the cold, analytical moonlight, you can almost feel pity for her. She is a sheep, and you are the wolf. The chase is agonizingly slow. It is not a sprint, but a marathon of inches of tiny adjustments. You gain on her, then the wind shifts slightly, and she pulls away. The captain issues a new quiet order. The sails are trimmed again, and you close the distance once more. It is a chess game played with 200-ton pieces on a board that stretches to the horizon, a game of patience, skill, and sheer bloody-minded determination. This is the most exhausting, painful work you have ever done in your life. Your body aches in places you did not know you had, and it is without a doubt the most thrilling. The boredom is a distant memory, a story from another lifetime. You are a pirate on a pirate ship chasing a prize across a dark sea. This is the truth behind the stories. Not the myth, not the glory, but the work. The hard-focused, unified work of the hunt. And for the first time in 55 days, you feel exactly where you are supposed to be. The chase is over. After hours that stretched into an eternity, the sea serpent has finally run down its prey. The final maneuver was a thing of silent predatory beauty. The captain, with a series of quiet hand signals, brought your ship gliding out of the moon's silver path and into the deep shadow of the merchantman's own sails. You are so close now that you can smell them. It's a strange foreign scent that drifts across the narrow channel of black water separating the two ships, not just the familiar tar and salt of your own vessel, but the faint ghostly aroma of cinnamon of cloves and the rich earthy smell of damp soil from some faraway land. They are carrying spices. They are carrying wealth. The frantic energy of the chase has vanished, replaced by a silence so deep and profound it feels like a physical weight. The only sounds are the soft slap of water against the two hulls, the groaning of their timbers in the swell, and the frantic wild pounding of your own heart, a drum beating a rhythm of terror and exhilaration against your ribs. The captain's voice is not a roar, but a low, dangerous whisper that seems to carry to every corner of the deck. Prepare to board. A final silent flurry of activity. Men check the priming of their pistols one last time, their faces grim and pale in the moonlight. The quartermaster Finn moves along the rail, handing out grappling hooks, his expression as cheerful as a man distributing plague notices. You watch as Silas the giant cracks his knuckles, the sound like dry branches snapping. He grins, and it is the most terrifying and reassuring thing you have ever seen. You draw your cutlass. The sound of the steel sliding from its leather scabbard seems impossibly loud in the tense quiet, a sharp ringing sheeing that announces your intent to the heavens. You grip the handle, its familiar shape cool and solid in your palm. Already you can feel a slick film of nervous sweat forming on your skin. You try to remember the advice a one-eyed pirate named Patches had given you weeks ago in a moment of drunken philosophy. The trick, lad, he'd slurred, is to look twice as mean as you feel. And for the love of all that's holy, don't trip over the rail. It seemed like sound advice at the time. Now it feels woefully inadequate. You take your place at the railing, crouching low, waiting. This is it. The moment before the storm. The long, agonizing, beautiful pause between the lightning flash and the thunderclap. The other ship is no longer a smudge on the horizon. It is a world unto itself. You can see the peeling paint on its hull, the intricate carving of a mermaid on its stern, her wooden eyes staring blankly back at you. You see a lantern swinging in a cabin window, casting a warm, gentle glow. You wonder who is in there. The merchant captain. His wife. Are they asleep, dreaming of home, completely unaware of the silent, grim-faced audience that has gathered just a few yards away? A face appears at their rail. A young man no older than you with wide, terrified eyes. He stares across at you, his mouth a perfect O of disbelief. He is not a soldier. He is a sailor just like you. He probably spent the last 55 days complaining about the food and waiting for the boredom to end too. Your eyes lock for a single eternal second. You are the wolf, he is the sheep. But in his face, you see a strange and uncomfortable reflection of your own. You try to arrange your face into a fearsome pirate-like scowl. You imagine it probably looks more like you've just bitten into a bad lemon. You grip your cutlass, the optimist, and give it a small, hopeful shake. You hope it remembers that its job description has been upgraded from biscuit crusher to something slightly more dramatic. You look along the rail at your crewmates. They are a gallery of shadows, a collection of men suspended in this final breathless moment. Some are utterly still, their faces carved from stone. Others fidget nervously, rechecking weapons that are already perfectly ready. You are all waiting for a single word, a single gesture from the captain that will unleash this coiled spring of violence. This is the moment. The one you heard about in the songs and the stories. The one you dreamed of in the noisy, smoky taverns back in port. The terror, the glory, the grand adventure. The end of the long calm. It's all here waiting for you, just a single leap across a narrow strip of dark water. You brace yourself, your muscles tight, your breath held in your chest. And in that final silent heart-stopping moment before the world explodes into chaos, a strange and traitorous thought drifts through your mind. You find yourself quietly, desperately missing the simple, predictable boredom of yesterday. Time slows. It stretches and thins, becoming a strange, viscous substance. The captain's hand remains in the air, a silent, terrible promise, and in this suspended moment, your world shrinks to the space between two heartbeats. Your senses, sharpened by adrenaline, pick up impossible details. You see a single drop of sweat trace a slow, deliberate path down Silas's temple. You see the faint tremor in the knuckles of the young sailor standing beside you, his grip on his own cutlass so tight it has turned his fingers white. You see the face of the terrified boy on the other ship, his mouth open, mouthing a name. Perhaps his mother's, perhaps a god's that is swallowed by the vast, uncaring silence between the two vessels. Your mind, which should be focused on the fight to come, becomes a whirlwind of absurdly trivial thoughts. Did you coil that last rope correctly? Will John the cook be angry if this all takes too long and the morning stew is ruined? You have a sudden, desperate craving for one of his terrible rock-hard biscuits, the ones you have to smash against the rail to dislodge the weevils. At least the weevils were a predictable problem. You could plan for weevils. There is no planning for what is about to happen next. You try to remember the heroic things you're supposed to do. You're supposed to leap across the gap with a fearsome cry, a whirlwind of righteous fury. You try to picture it. You picture your foot slipping on the damp rail, your fearsome cry turning into a surprised yelp as you tumble into the cold black water between the ships. You decide practically that your primary goal is simply not to fall down. Everything after that will be a bonus. You tighten your grip on the hilt of your cutlass. The leather is slick in your palm. This is it. This is the story. The thunder, the glory, the terror, the moment that will be sung about in taverns and whispered in awe by boys in dusty port towns. Everything you thought you wanted, everything you've been waiting for, hoping for through 55 days of soul-crushing boredom. The grand, magnificent, and terrifying adventure has finally arrived. And in this moment of ultimate heart-stopping clarity, a profound, ridiculous, and deeply human truth washes over you. You realize with a certainty that is both hilarious and heartbreaking that you are quietly, strangely, desperately missing the simple, predictable boredom of yesterday. You miss the taste of weevils in your biscuits. You miss the rhythmic, brain-numbing scrape of the holy stone on the deck. You miss the ache in your back from mending sails. You miss the quiet, philosophical grumbling of a one-legged cook who understood that a full belly is more real than any promise of gold. You miss the vast, beautiful nothingness of it all because the nothingness was safe. The nothingness was calm. The captain's hand begins its descent. The world holds its final silent breath. The story is about to break, but you are not here. You are not on the cold, damp deck of a pirate ship, knuckles white around the hilt of a sword. You are not on the precipice of a terrifying leap into the unknown. You are safe. You are warm. You are in a place that the pirate you are dreaming of can only imagine. He is dreaming of the quiet of your room. He is dreaming of the gentle weight of your blankets. He is dreaming of the long, slow, predictable peace that you are now floating in. The long calm he has lost is the treasure you now hold. So let the captain's hand remain forever in the air. Let the shouts of battle fade before they can even begin. Let the clash of steel turn to a distant whisper, and then let that whisper dissolve into the profound, peaceful silence of your own quiet space. Feel the tension leave your shoulders. Feel the grip on your own imaginary sword relax. There is no rail to leap over, no enemy to fight. There is only the soft support of your bed beneath you, the gentle rise and fall of your own breathing. The adventure the pirate sought was loud and sharp and dangerous. The treasure you have found tonight is quiet and soft and safe. So let the great empty ocean rock you to sleep. Let the wind in the rigging become a gentle lullaby. The story is over. The long calm has returned not for the pirate but for you. And it is here to stay for the rest of this peaceful, dreamless night. Sleep well.